Was it a complication from having a child, or was it something different?
It was probably what they call childbed fever, where germs got in her blood system during the birth of the baby and shut her system down. And still
so sad.
In the pre-antibiotic time period, so there would have been nothing that they could really do for her.
Right. And she had the other little girl.
Yeah, there
2
was
years before. It was
like a year and a half.
It
not
wasn't
very
much
long.
of an age difference.
So yeah, Tallulah had an older sister named Eugenia. After their mother's death, their father just fell apart. He basically just became an alcoholic and partied all the time. And knowing that he couldn't take care of a baby and a toddler, he sent both the girls to live with his parents in Jasper, Alabama. And the parents being her grandfather, who was a U.S. Senator, and then her grandmother, who was also named Tallulah. I read that the name Tallulah came from Tallulah Falls, Georgia.
Yeah.
That was where the grandmother was conceived, apparently.
Okay. So I've been to the Tallulah Gorge.
Yeah.
And I didn't put that together because Tallulah is, I mean, that's, it's a name. It's not like totally weird, but yeah.
So yeah, I never find that people named after the places that they're conceived in, that it's just creepy.
That is weird.
It's a throwback to Isaac Senior.
Yeah.
But so Tallulah and Eugenia were basically raised by their grandmother since their grandfather was in D.C. a lot of the time. The grandmother had a hard time caring for them. They apparently were both very difficult children, particularly Tallulah. She was known for throwing these massive temper tantrums where she would throw herself on the ground and scream, and then when that didn't work, she would hold her breath until she went blue in the face.
I think that happens in Congress.
That does happen in Congress, actually, so she probably learned it from the best. No, and the solution to all this was her grandmother throwing water on her face to get her to stop. So
that's what we need. Grandmothers with buckets of water just sitting around the periphery of the chamber.
Right, exactly.
The congressional chamber.
Well, apparently she was a very formidable woman because Tallulah's father wanted to be an actor as well. And he went to New York and was only there for a few weeks trying to make it happen when his mother emailed him. She emailed him.
Yeah, that happened.
She wrote him a letter.
They were way before the time. They were way ahead of the time.
They were. She wrote him a scathing letter, basically browbeating him into coming back home to Alabama and being a more upright citizen than what an actor would have been. It's not entirely surprising that Tallulah ended up being an actress herself, as there was a dramatic streak running through the family. Now, at some point...
She had to get it somewhere.
Right. So, Tallulah was initially kind of overweight as a child.
Oh, right. But the sister was
very pretty and slim. And so
she made up for that.
Yeah, Tallulah was always trying to get attention, I guess, as a result of this. And her father didn't help the situation because apparently when he did drag himself home with his friends, they would have parties and he would get Tallulah to stand up on the table and dance and sing bawdy songs.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah. So apparently grandmother was not formidable enough to tame Tallulah and Eugenia, so they were sent to a convent school in Manhattanville, New York for a couple of years. And when they returned, I believe they were in their sort of mid-teens or coming up on their mid-teens. And so they split their time between their grandparents' home in Jasper. The home was called Sunset. It's quite your classical, what you think about southern fancy homes. It's definitely...
Well, they lived there right away not after the convent. It was after the mom died.
Okay, so they were raised.
He sent them to be raised by
the grandparents.
Grandparents and the aunt's house. So they were between Montgomery and Jasper.
Okay.
And then they were hard to be controlled.
Okay. So
and then they were sent away.
So they divide their time between Jasper and Montgomery and then were sent to the convent school. And then when they returned, they were both getting towards marriageable age. The reason we bring all this up is that in Montgomery, when they were staying with their aunt, one of their friends was Zelda Sayer, who eventually married F. Scott Fitzgerald. So both of them, or all of them, ran in the same social groups, and I imagine that Tallulah got along with Zelda because Zelda was a bit of an exhibitionist as well. So good times. Tallulah hit puberty and emerged as a relative. She's pretty beautiful when you look at her photographs. That kind of odd 1920s beauty that seemed to be in vogue.
The vacant stare and the
the
aloofness.
Right, the aloofness.
But, yeah.
And which is kind of interesting, giving what a future director says about her. But she is very pretty. She slims down, and actually around the age of 15, she sent her photograph into a contest sponsored by Picture Play magazine, which was kind of one of the Hollywood tabloids at the time. Tabloid might be a bit of a stretch.
Not like really, In Touch or like...
No, I hadn't quite gotten to like the In Touch or or Us magazine. Yeah. It was very popular. People, read about the stars and that kind of thing. But I'm kind of interested on how this actually went down. She apparently sent the photo in without her name and address. And so they didn't know who she was, and she won. And when they ran the next magazine with her picture on the cover saying, who is she? This? She was in the drugstore and saw the magazine and was like, oh. So her dad wrote the letter saying,
that's so funny.
With the copy of the photograph he sent along with it, and said, this is my daughter. So she won, and her prize was to go to New York and have a bit role in a movie called Who Loved Him Best, which sounds like your typical 1920s silent film. So her Aunt Louise was her chaperone, which initially some accounts that you read said that she went on her own, which I just couldn't imagine sending I think she was 16 by the time this went down.
Well, her sister was getting married, but still.
That's true, yeah.
That's not an independent thing. It's, getting into,
the
a
movies,
relationship with a man to take care of her. So I can't imagine that Tallulah would have just gone up to New York by herself at the same age.
Right. So her aunt went to be her chaperone, but I'm thinking there wasn't much chaperonage going on there because of what she ended up getting into. But they moved into the Algonquin Hotel, which I want to stay in because they have a cat that lives there. And
so cute.
He's adorable. Follow his Instagram feed. So they moved into the Algonquin, and of course, Tallulah quickly makes friends with critic, writer, and poet Dorothy Parker, who was one of the founding members of Algonquin Roundtable. And this was a big social club in the 20s for about a decade, and it included some of the leading lights of society.
Like actors or...
No, not. It was mostly writers, playwrights, critics, publicists, that kind of thing. The avant-garde, of the culture scene. Now they had hangers-on that were actresses, including Tallulah.
Sure.
Their nickname internally was the Vicious Circle. So Tallulah certainly felt at home with them because she had a irreverent sense of humor and brutal honesty, as we will soon find out. It was at these parties with the Algonquin Club, or Round Table, that she was introduced to drugs, most likely cocaine. She one time told an up-and-coming starlet that she had a shoebox full of cocaine at the age of 16. Of course, back then, at this time, cocaine wasn't quite it is the same thing as what we have today, but it was more normal. Because, we remember they were putting cocaine in Pepsi and Coca-Cola originally.
Sure. Okay.
It was just considered something, to pep you up or whatever.
Okay.
And so...
It wasn't like a controlled substance.
Right. They didn't really know what they were playing with. So that's how she got into that. She also befriended Ethel Barrymore of the famous Barrymore acting family. And, some people say that she had an affair with her, but I read a lot of different women that she had affairs with that may have been more friendships. So
wow.
She was apparently offered a role in the 1920 production of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, provided that she visit the casting couch with Ethel's brother John Barrymore, who we've talked about John Barrymore in the past. He dated Evelyn Nesbit before they were broken asunder by Stanford White's jealousy. So if you have not listened to that episode and want to learn more, go back and listen to that. We do know for sure that her first, I guess, affair was with an actress named Eva Le Gallienne.
Oh.
She started out in films, but then eventually retired from Hollywood to focus on stage. And she founded like a pretty famous stage group along the lines.
Where did she meet her? Is this in New York?
Yes, this was in New York. Ava was one of the hangers-on of the Algonquin set. In fact, Eva and Talullah and 2 other women were called the 4 riders of the Algonquin.
I wonder if they had a cat back then.
I wonder too. I think they did, actually. That cat seems to regenerate himself quite frequently. Apparently, all 4 of those women were either bisexual or lesbians. And this is kind of the interesting thing about Talullah. She eventually became a gay icon, and they can tell that she had some relationships with women. In fact, she specifically said men were for sex, women were for relationships. But then she also had some other random quotes, like she's apparently told one of her friends, I can never be a lesbian because they have no sense of humor. And then she also walked into a party one night and introduced herself as, I'm a lesbian, what do you do?
That's
so she,
interesting.
Beyond those little anecdotes, she never really described herself as bisexual or otherwise. She did describe herself as ambisextress.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's a new one. I've never heard that. Yeah. And there's lots of words these days.
I know. I like that though.
Yeah.
It works.
Sure.
So she continued in New York for 5 years and with several little bit roles here and there, but nothing really took off. And so in 1923, she decided to move to London, mostly because she had consulted a celebrity psychic who told her that her fortune would be made there.
Okay.
And that she should go even if she had to swim.
Yeah.
The channel. So,
sure.
Yeah.
But she was good at theater, so I guess it wasn't a horrible
idea,
premonition that she should go there and
try her luck.
Hit it big. Yeah.
So she landed in the West End, which is the famous theater area in London, and would become one of the most popular actresses on the stage during this time. Her first role was in a play called The Dancers, and apparently it was also one of her more famous roles. She did enough acting to where she was able to afford a Bentley, but she also found out that she kind of sucked in the directions department, so she often would hire a taxi to drive in front of her to where her destination was, and she would follow the taxi.
She wouldn't get lost.
Right. Just kind of pretty hilarious.
So did she have money? I mean, her parents and grandparents, her father and grandfather were sort of in the political
They
world,
said that they were not like crazy wealthy.
Yeah, but enough for her to just go off to New York and then go abroad.
Right.
So she must have had something.
They said that, she at times would not have a lot of money. In fact, the proprietor of the Algonquin said that he could either run the hotel or run Talullah Bankhead because she was always not paying for bills and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it seemed to be kind of a helter-skelter type of thing. Now, she did, as I said, develop quite a following in London. Theater goers would sometimes queue 24 hours in advance to get tickets into her latest plays. And they said that she became a real heroine amongst women there, that they would, crowd into the theater wherever she was playing, and they would throw flowers and scream and carry on and stuff. So she was really very much a kind of a superstar almost. They said they would have thousands of people storm her dressing room after the show trying to get in to meet her and that kind of thing. But she, at this time, was linked with several men in the city. She had attracted the Prince of Wales, apparently. Edward, soon to be Edward VIII, at least for a little bit, was half in love with her. The